Intense headlines never stop. Missile. Explosion. Warning. They repeat over and over, flooding every news broadcast until it feels like the entire country of Iran is drowning in bombs and fire. But trust me, that's not the whole story. High up in the mountains, far from the urgency of press conferences and breaking news, there are still villages where mornings begin in a completely different way. Where the elderly don't have to run to bomb shelters, where families sit by the fire each morning, slowly talking about the harvest, their livestock, and their own lives. They don't even know what's happening out there. Many people might find it hard to believe that right now, Iran still has places like this. So let's set aside the political headlines and the debates about conflict for a moment, and step with us into a completely different Iran. An Iran where life continues peacefully in ancient villages that the world seems to have forgotten. Among them is one village that has kept its colors of time for centuries. This is Abianeh, the Red Village. The first thing that catches your eye is not crowds or noise. It's the deep red that covers almost every rooftop, every wall, and every narrow alley. The walls here are built from local clay and mud bricks. The high iron oxide content in the soil gives them that distinctive reddish-brown color. After every rain, the red of Abianeh doesn't fade. Instead, it seems to grow even deeper, richer, and more enduring with time. In winter, when white snow blankets the tiled roofs and the steep slopes, that signature red stands out even more clearly. Donkeys slowly carrying loads are still a familiar sight here after hundreds of years. For many of the elders in the village, donkeys remain the most familiar means of transportation. Slow, steady, and perfectly suited to Abianeh's narrow, winding path. As you walk along the small lanes, the old houses with their weathered balconies give you the feeling that they have stood here for centuries. Mornings in Abianeh have a very special kind of quiet. Soft sunlight spreads across the red rooftops, making the whole village feel both warm and strangely moving in a way that's hard to name. In the early morning chill, a glass of strong Iranian black tea with nabat brings a clean, gentle sweetness that's truly unique. Inside the rooms, there's nothing fancy. Just the everyday objects that serve daily life. Everything is simple, but that simplicity creates a feeling of warmth from a home that has sheltered many generations. Traditional crafts are still quietly preserved here. The steady sound of the loom echoes. Patient hands guide the wool threads, and ancient patterns slowly come to life on the fabric. Along the village paths are small shops displaying all kinds of exquisite handmade crafts. Most of them are made by the skilled and diligent hands of local women. Taftoon bread is a traditional Iranian bread. It's made from wheat flour, shaped into flat rounds and baked by sticking it directly onto the hot walls of a clay oven. When it's done, the bread has a light, crispy crust with a distinctive smoky aroma. It's usually eaten while still warm with honey, cheese, or slow-cooked lamb dishes. In Abyaneh, Islam and Zoroastrianism have quietly coexisted for centuries. The women's clothing is the clearest sign that distinguishes the two faiths. Those wearing black chadors and headscarves are Muslim. Those in colorful floral dresses belong to the Zoroastrian faith. For Zoroastrian women, simply covering their hair with a scarf is enough. They don't have to follow the strict rule of wearing a black chador like in Islam. If you look closely at the old wooden doors, you'll notice two different door knockers. The long, heavy one makes a deep sound, signaling that a man is at the door. The smaller, lighter one rings with a higher tone, meant for women. Just from the sound of the knock, the people inside already know whether the visitor is a man or a woman. In Abyaneh, even the smallest details carry traces of an ancient way of life. Perhaps that's why this village is remembered not only for the red color of its earth, but for the feeling that time has never really left this place. Leaving behind the warm red tones of Abyaneh, our journey heads north, crossing mountain ranges and a dramatic change in climate, bringing us to Masouleh. This stepped village in Gilan province has air that feels damper, colder, and where mist always seems to drift around the mountain slopes. Masouleh is an ancient village clinging to the mountainside, where architecture and nature have almost become one. The roofs of the houses below also serve as the courtyards and pathways for the houses above, creating the village's unique terraced structure. Houses here are usually 2 stories high, built from fired bricks, clay, and tree trunk. The upper floor is for living, with a cozy living room, bedrooms, while the lower floor is reserved for the kitchen. Winter here is beautiful in its own special way. White snow covers the rooftops and drifts along the narrow path, blurring the line between people and the mountains in perfect stillness. In front of the old houses, women of the village quietly sit knitting wool in traditional clothing. From their skillful hands, little doll slowly takes shape. The knitted items sold here are mostly woven by the women of the village. Handicrafts here aren't just for sale to support daily life. They are traces of an old way of living that has been passed down through many generations. Deeper into the market, the rhythm of life becomes clearer with small stalls lined up one after another, selling handicrafts, fabrics, and local souvenirs. Although metalworking and forging tools have existed here for a very long time, When you step into this market today, you can still hear the sound of hammers ringing through the stalls. Along the narrow paths, local-style eateries create a very special atmosphere unique to Masula. From here, you can sit and enjoy local dishes while looking out over the mountains and the lively market below. Only those who have truly experienced that feeling can understand why this village is not just beautiful to look at. It makes you want to stay much longer. Down below, children run and chase each other across the connected rooftops, creating a scene you rarely see anywhere else. Evenings in Mosul never fall completely silent. Instead, they carry their own gentle energy. Golden lights turn on one by one through the thin mist. Visitors slowly stroll across the connected rooftops, stopping at the small stalls to admire and buy traditional handmade items. Leaving behind the golden terraces of Masula and the damp air of the north, we continue our journey to the northwest, about 60 kilometers south of Tabriz, to encounter a completely different wonder. Nestled in the embrace of the Sahand Mountains, far from the noisy pace of the modern world, there is a village made not just of stone, but of silence itself. This is Kandovan, the stone village in northwestern Iran. The houses here are carved directly into the volcanic rock formations, as if they were born from the heart of the mountain. According to geological studies, Mount Sahand experienced powerful volcanic activity in the past, leaving behind massive flows of lava. Over millions of years, the remaining lava was gently eroded and shaped by nature into the strange cone-shaped rocks you see on the hillsides today. Kandovan is believed to be over 700 years old. Some scholars suggest people may have lived in this area for more than 1,000 years. Many believe the village took shape in the 13th century, when people fled the Mongol invasion. The name Kandovan comes from the Persian word Khan, meaning to dig. And indeed, the people here dug deep into the mountain to create multi-level living spaces, homes, storage areas, and even shelters for their animals, all nestled inside the rock. Stepping into the narrow paths of Kandovan is like entering another world. Children's laughter echoes somewhere among the rock walls. The kind faces and warm smiles of the villagers create a feeling of closeness that no modern apartment in the city can match. These houses are not just ruins of the past. They are still lived in continuously after many centuries, making Kandovan one of the very few ancient stone villages that still has real living life inside. Today, Kandovan remains a small but vibrant village with around 600 to 700 residents. Life here moves at a slow, steady rhythm. Many families still live in the stone houses that have been part of their lives for generations. Despite their unusual shape, these homes are surprisingly comfortable, cool in summer and warm in winter, thanks to the natural insulating properties of the volcanic rock. Surrounding Kandovan is a peaceful natural landscape of steep hills, green meadows, and clear streams. The people here mainly live from farming, animal husbandry, and traditional crafts. Herds of goats and sheep graze on the lush green pastures. Honey and dried nuts are the signature products of this land. The honey in Kandavan comes mainly from the traditional beekeeping practiced by the locals. Because the bees gather nectar from the wild flowers and herbs around the village, the honey carries a very special flavor of Kandavan's earth and sky. Far from conflict, close to nature, Kandavan seems to exist in a different rhythm. Hidden among the mountains and protected by nature, it creates a safe and stable environment where people can live, grow, and preserve the core values of their community. From the rugged volcanic rocks of Kandavan, the journey heads west, deep into the Zagros Mountains in Kurdistan province, leading us to Palangan. Palangan is an ancient Kurdish village nestled deep in the mountains of Kurdistan province in western Iran, near Kamyaran, not far from the Iraqi border. From a distance, the village looks as if it is growing straight out of the mountainside. Stone houses are stacked one upon another along the steep slope, layer after layer, making Palangan look like a giant staircase embracing the valley. Here, architecture does not fight against nature. It follows the terrain, clings to the rocky mountain, and gradually becomes part of the landscape itself. A branch of the Tangivar River flows right through the middle of the village, dividing the space into two halves and giving Palangan its very own rhythm of life. Water flows beneath the village. Rows of stone houses rise up on both sides of the steep slopes. Farther away, layer upon layer of the Zagros Mountains stretch to the horizon. It all creates the feeling that this place wasn't built. It was formed naturally over time, as if people simply came here and learned how to live with the mountain, the stone, and the flowing water. The houses in Palangan are built from stone, wood, and clay in a simple but enduring traditional style. Just like in Masule, the roof of the house below also serves as the front courtyard of the house above. This structure connects the entire village into one unified whole, where every step of a house is also part of the path, and every lane seems to lead straight into the daily life of the people. Nature in Palangan changes clearly with the seasons, and each season reveals a different beauty of the village. When spring and summer arrive, The hills turn green, the water runs clear, and the sky opens wide. Autumn covers the mountain slopes in soft golden hues, making the stone houses appear even more peaceful. And in winter, when snow blankets the rooftops and slopes, Palangan looks both cold and beautifully still. Perhaps that's why many people call this place the forgotten paradise of Kurdistan. But Palangan lives not only on the beauty of its landscape, it lives on the daily rhythm that has been repeated for many generations. In the Zagros Mountains with their wide meadows, animal husbandry has long been an essential part of life here. In Palangan, the Tangjivar River flowing through the village not only provides fresh water, but also supports fish farming. Fish is an essential dish when visiting Palangan. Fresh fish is lightly seasoned with salt and wild herbs, then grilled directly over hot coals or baked against the walls of a clay oven. The white flesh is sweet, the skin crispy and fragrant, preserving the natural flavor of the river and mountain. Besides fish, Palangan's cuisine carries the simple, rustic Kurdish spirit with dishes made from dairy and lamb. Homemade yogurt, slow-cooked lamb with wild herbs, or local bean and vegetable soup. All of them are simple and honest, reflecting how the people live close to and in harmony with the rugged nature of the Zagros Mountains. During festival season, Palangan comes alive in a different way. The houses are decorated. People in colorful Kurdish clothing appear on the stone steps and steep paths, dancing together, lighting fires, and welcoming the new year against the backdrop of the mountains waking up after winter. In those moments, Palangan is no longer just an ancient village. It becomes a collective memory where old customs and ways of life are carefully preserved from one generation to the next. In Palangan, what stays with you longest is not just the terraced architecture or the beauty of the Zagros Mountains. It's the feeling of a place where people have never tried to separate themselves from nature. They live on the mountain, depend on the mountain, and blend themselves with the mountain forests. Leaving the greener Zagros Mountains of Palangan behind, the journey continues southeast to Maymand. Maymand is an ancient village deep in the arid mountains of Kerman province in southeastern Iran. Here, people have lived among stone, wind, and the harshness of nature for thousands of years. Nestled in a small valley facing south, Maymand was not built in the usual way. It was hand-carved from the soft mountain rock. At first glance, it looks like ancient abandoned cave dwellings. Because of this unusual character, the village has become a fascinating tourist attraction in Kerman province. Archaeological evidence shows that humans have been present here for about 12,000 years, and the village has been continuously inhabited for more than 3,000 years. In summer, even though Maymand sits at an altitude of over 2,240 meters, temperatures outside can still reach 45 degrees Celsius because of the nearby Lut Desert, a place where NASA satellites once recorded surface temperatures as high as 70.7 degrees Celsius in 2005. people stay warm inside the deep, rock-carved houses. Thanks to the thick stone with its high thermal mass, the inside of the caves remains warm even when outdoor temperatures drop below 0 degrees Celsius. The thick stone walls retain heat well, turning the house into an ideal shelter from the freezing winds of the semi-desert and high mountains. One of these houses was once a fire temple, showing that a Zoroastrian community once lived here. Today it is used as a small museum, displaying everyday objects and hunting tools dating back thousands of years. To this day, the history of how the village was formed remains a mystery. Some theories suggest it was once a refuge for tribes in southern Kerman, but it may also have formed from the nomadic herding lifestyle, when people carved into the rock to shelter from the sun, the cold, and wild animals. Today, although the population here is only around 150 people, most of those who remain are elderly. People who still want to keep the traditional way of life among the vast nature and desert. Their lives are still tied to their herds of livestock. They travel far down to the plains to graze. Temporary tents are set up simply with wool carpets or tree branches, basic but convenient for moving. During the day, the herds of sheep and goats are let loose to roam along the grassy slopes of the high mountain. Milk is milked from the goats, then strained and cooked. These are the main sources of nutrition for the people here. At the end of the day, the livestock are gathered back after a long day of roaming. Smoke rises from the kitchens, and everyone prepares dinner together in the quiet stillness of the Rocky Mountains. That is the special rhythm and beauty of life in Maymand, a place where traces of the past never seem to have left, but remain present in every small daily activity. Iran's ancient village of little people. Makunik is an ancient village in South Khorasan province, eastern Iran. For around 1,500 years, it has endured in one of the harshest, most barren landscapes of the region. It became famous for its tiny houses, so low and narrow that anyone entering must bend down, sometimes even crawl. Because of this, Makunik was once described as a kind of Lilliput. In the past, many residents here were noticeably shorter than average, up to half a meter below the norm. This gave rise to legends of an ancient city of dwarves. Theories pointed to poor nutrition, contaminated water, and centuries of isolation. Today, researchers believe much of that story was exaggerated over time. What makes Makunik truly remarkable, however, is not just the legend, but the ingenuity with which its people adapted to a difficult and unforgiving environment. The houses, built from mud, wood, and thatch, hug the hillside, with ceilings often no higher than 1.4 to 2 meters. They were compact enough to shelter entire families while keeping warmth in during freezing winters and the scorching heat out in summer. For generations, the village remained almost completely cut off from the outside world. Then, slowly, roads arrived, transport improved, and connections with nearby towns began to transform daily life. Today, the people of Makunik are taller, and much of the village has changed. Yet even now, it still holds the visible traces of a past shaped by hardship, isolation, and a profoundly different way of life. Out there, when the sounds of explosions, political tension continue to echo without pause, these ancient villages in Iran still quietly exist with a different, peaceful, and resilient rhythm of life. From the vibrant red that dyes the village of Abiane to the misty stone terraces of Masule. From the surreal stone houses with the unforgettable smell of stables in Kandovan to the clear Tangivar River flowing beside the village of Palangan. And finally, the journey ends at Makunik, where life seems almost impossible to exist. These villages are not lifeless relics. They still have fires burning every morning, footsteps on the stone paths. They still have quiet hands passing down ancient crafts, old memories, and the way people remain connected to their homeland through countless generations. And perhaps that is the true vitality of a people. Many wonder why, in these villages where life is so difficult and the land seems unfit for human existence, they have stayed here for over 1,000 years, through so many generations. What is it that makes them so attached to these places? I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments to help us understand more about these villages. If this journey has brought you even a small moment of calm, please stay with us by liking and subscribing to the channel so we can continue exploring lands where time seems to have slowed down. Thank you for joining us on this journey.